So now we added navigation in different forms. It's time to explore more things we can configure here on our route configurations. And there's one especially important feature which you need in many apps which you're going to build. We get this team members component here, right? And in this team members component, I want to render the different members of a team we selected. Now at the moment, this is kind of a dummy component which we're not even using. It has some built-in dummy data and we're not rendering this component anywhere. Now a common scenario, which you have in many apps, is that you might have another route here for a path of /teams, but now not just that path. We already have a route for that, and you should only have one route per path. Instead, we use /teams/ and now we want to have some dynamic ID here, so that we support paths like teams T1, if T1 would be a team ID, or T2. And we would load the same component with different data for these different teams. So we need a dynamic route with a so-called route parameter. And that's a feature supported by the Vue router. You can define a dynamic path segment by adding a colon and then any name of your choice, for example, team ID. Now that means that this route will become active if the user enters /teams and then anything thereafter. Therefore, the order matters, by the way. If you had another route here, /teams/new, so not a dynamic segment, but simply the text new, you should put this first, because otherwise this path here, this route, would match this route as well, because new would be interpreted as a team ID. Now we don't need the new route here, I just wanted to make you aware of this and make you aware of how these different routes will be parsed and prioritized. Here we don't need this new route though, but we want to set up this dynamic route here with the dynamic route parameter. So here I want to load a component, and the component that should be loaded is a component we need to import, the team members component from /components teams team members.vue. That's the component that should be loaded here. And with that, if we now save this, we can enter teams/t1 and we load this component. The same for anything here. It's always the same component because anything after teams/ will be interpreted as a value for this dynamic segment. Now at the moment it's always the same component with the same dummy data, but now we can change this because we will get access to this concrete value which is used for this route parameter, for this placeholder here. We can get access for the concrete value the user entered inside of the component that is being loaded, so inside of team members. I don't want to use my dummy team data here. Instead, we do have dummy team data for all teams defined in app view. Here we got teams and we got users. And for every team we have a list of members. Now my idea is simple. When one of these three supported team IDs is being entered here in the URL after teams as a value for this route parameter, I want to load the appropriate team, find out which members we have in that team, and also load the appropriate users. Now we are already providing teams and users here in app view, so we can inject both in team members, and we'll need to do that so that we get access to that data. So here I will add inject and inject users and teams. Now we just need a way of getting access to this dynamic segment the user entered, so to the concrete value that was entered for this route parameter. And we could do this in the created lifecycle hook. That will be called when the component is created before it's shown on the screen, but once all the data is available. So here in created, we can now get access to the injected data, but also, and that's the good thing, to our routing data. And for this, we got another special property which is available. We saw $router, which gave us access to the overall router. We also have $route, so without an R at the end. The route is available in this component because this component is loaded through the router. And then the route gives us access to various pieces of information. For example, to the path that was responsible for loading this page, which in this case would be something like /teams and then the concrete team ID. So we could parse the team ID from that path, but we don't even have to do that. We have another property available, the Params property. This holds all the route parameters that were used for getting to this page. And in this case, we have one route parameter for this page. Everything that starts with a colon here is a route parameter. And the name you chose here will be the name by which you can extract the value provided by the user. So in my case, the name is team ID, and hence here in team members, I can access params.team ID. If you chose a different name in your routing config here after the colon, you have to use the same different name here. So with that, we got our team ID, and I'm storing it in an extra constant. And we can now use the team ID to find the correct team in this injected teams array. So here I got the selected team, let's say, by accessing teams, this.teams, so the injected teams array, and then there the find method, which is a built-in array method, which needs a function that executes on every array element, which gets the team for which it's currently running as an argument, and it will run for all the teams in there, and which should return true if it's the team we're looking for, and that would be the case if the team ID is equal to the team ID we got here. So this helps us select the right team. Of course, we might have entered an ID which doesn't exist, but let's ignore this case for now, and let's instead then, once we got a team, find the members in there. Now for that, of course, in every team, we got the members key, which holds IDs of members we find in users. So we got our members by accessing selected team.members. But now we want to reach out to users and find the full user entries for those members, because members is just an array full of IDs. And for that, I will write a simple loop here. I will have my selected members here, which is an empty array initially. Then I go through all the members of my members array, which is this array full of IDs. And I will then reach out to my users, so to this injected users array, for every member ID I got, and find the user where the user ID is equal to member. Keep in mind, member is just another user ID because we have a bunch of user IDs in members. This then is my selected user, or at least one selected user. So I add it to selected members by pushing it onto this array like this. So this goes through all the member IDs we got for the given team, and we then select the user, the full user object for every user ID we got in our team, and then I add it to selected members, so that selected members then is an array full of full user objects. Well, and that's then something I want to store in a data property here, because I need the team name and a members data property in my template. So we'll add both here. Team name initially is an empty array, an empty string I mean, and members is an empty array. And then here in created, I set this members, so my data property, equal to my selected members I got here, so to this array filled with the concrete member objects. And I set this team name equal to selected team, and then on every team we got a name property, so I can access dot name here. And with that, if we save this, if we enter something like teams T1, I see nothing because I have an error here. Cannot read property push of undefined. Yeah, here it's not this selected members in this for loop. It's just selected members because this is a local constant. My bad. So selected members.push is correct here. And with that, if you then reload, this looks better. And now I see Max Schwartz and Praveen Kumar for team T1. For T2, I see different members. And for T3, I also see different members. So now this works. Now, of course, it would be nice if we could not just get there by manually entering a URL, but for example, by clicking these buttons on the Teams page. And therefore, that's what we're going to work on next.